My aunt and cousin demanded I give them my newborn because they claimed I was too poor to be a good mom. When I refused, they called CPS and falsely accused me of drug use and planning to harm my baby. When I declined, they contacted Child Protective Services, falsely claiming I was using drugs and intended to harm my son. I'm 22, and indeed, I left college 2 years ago because I couldn't afford it anymore. Honestly, the financial burden was overwhelming, and I wasn't even certain about my life path at that point. I'm currently employed at a grocery store. It's not glamorous, but it covers my expenses and provides health insurance, which became crucial when I became pregnant. The baby's father isn't involved, and I'm perfectly fine with that, as he wasn't a good person anyway, and I'm better off without him. When I discovered I was pregnant, I was frightened, but also strangely thrilled. As I've always wished to be a mother, I realize that might sound naive for a 22-year-old working in retail, but I've been self-reliant since I was 16. That's when my parents passed away in a car accident, and I moved in with my Aunt Fiona, my dad's sister. She took me in, and I'm thankful for that, but she's always made it clear she perceives me as a disappointment, believing I should have achieved more in life. The thing is, Fiona has a daughter, Penny, who is 28, and married to a man named Owen. They've been trying to conceive for about 5 years without success. They've undergone fertility treatments, IVF, and all that costly stuff. Yet nothing has worked, and Penny is virtually consumed by the desire for a baby. I genuinely empathize with her. I truly do, because I can see how much it pains her. However, that doesn't mean I should feel guilty for getting pregnant when she cannot. So, when I informed Fiona I was pregnant, she was far from pleased. She repeatedly questioned my plans and suggested I might consider adoption, asking how I intended to raise a baby on my own with no education or a substantial job. I told her I was keeping my baby, and that was final. But she persisted in bringing it up every few weeks, as if hoping I'd change my mind. Then, when I was around 6 months pregnant, Penny visited Fiona's house while I was there. She began crying, lamenting how unfair it was that some people conceive effortlessly, while she's done everything correctly, followed all the guidelines, and spent thousands of dollars with no outcome. I felt incredibly uncomfortable sitting there, listening, but I remained silent, because what was I supposed to say? But then Penny looked directly at me and asserted that perhaps this was fate, and that God intended for her to raise my baby, as she could provide everything he deserved, and I could return to school and reclaim my life. I simply stared at her, unable to believe she was serious. Then Fiona interjected, stating that Penny had a valid point, and that I should genuinely consider what was best for the baby. I informed them both that I was not giving up my baby, and that the conversation was over. However, Penny started crying more intensely, claiming it wasn't fair and that she would be such a good mother and that I was being selfish. Fiona advised me to think it over and avoid rash decisions, but I responded that there was nothing to deliberate, as this baby was mine and I was keeping him. After that, the atmosphere in the house became extremely tense. Fiona constantly made subtle remarks about how difficult it would be for me, how expensive babies were, and how I would afford childcare and so forth. She wasn't wrong that it would be tough, but her tone made it clear she believed I was making a grave error. Penny began visiting more often, bringing baby clothes and toys, expressing her excitement to be an aunt, and professing her desire to simply help. Yet, it felt strange and possessive, as if she were plotting something. She would inquire about my birth plan, if I had chosen a pediatrician, and offer to assist with research. I repeatedly stated I had it handled, but she wouldn't drop the subject. The most unsettling part was when she asked if I had considered what might happen if something went wrong during delivery, and who would care for the baby if I couldn't. I told her that was morbid, and I wasn't discussing it. She claimed she was just concerned for me and the baby, wanting to ensure we were both taken care of, but it felt like she was hoping something would happen to me so she could intervene and take my child. So, my son was born 3 weeks ago, The delivery went smoothly, and he's healthy and perfect, and I love him more than I ever imagined possible. The initial few days were challenging because I was exhausted and sore, and figuring out breastfeeding, but my neighbor offered significant help, bringing meals, and things were progressing well. Fiona came to see the baby the day after I returned, home from the hospital. She held him for about an hour, continuously remarking on his beauty and how much he resembled Penny as a baby, which was odd, since Penny and I aren't even directly related. Then she asked me again if I had truly considered my decision and if I was certain I could handle being a single mother. I told her I was sure and that I needed her to stop questioning my choices because I was his mother, and that was final. She claimed she was just looking out for me, but I could tell she still hoped I would change my mind. Penny arrived the next day with Owen, bringing a large gift basket filled with expensive baby items. Penny repeatedly asked to hold him, took pictures, and spoke about how she would utterly spoil him as his aunt. Owen appeared uncomfortable with her intensity but remained silent. Then Penny asked if I had given further thought to our conversation, and I replied, "What conversation?" She then mentioned letting her and Owen adopt the baby. I told her I believed we had resolved this months ago, and that I was not giving up my son. She started crying again, claiming I was being cruel, and that she would love him immensely and offer him opportunities I never could. I became truly enraged then, and told her she needed to leave my house and stop inquiring about my baby, because he wasn't hers and never would be. She said I was being selfish, and that I didn't comprehend what it was like to desire something so intensely and be unable to possess it. I countered that didn't entitle her to my child. Fiona interjected, stating that Penny was just emotional and that I should be more understanding, but I declared I was done being understanding, and that they both needed to accept this baby was mine and stop trying to guilt me into giving him away. Penny left crying, with Owen following her. Fiona remained behind to tell me I was breaking her daughter's heart, and that the least I could do was consider what was best for everyone involved. I told her the only person I needed to consider was my son, and that what was best for him was remaining with his mother, who loved him. She argued that love wasn't enough, and that Penny and Owen could provide him stability, a genuine family, college funds, and all the things I couldn't. I stated that I was his real family, and that I would manage the rest, and that this conversation was over. Things were quiet for about a week after that, and I thought they had finally understood the message. But then last Monday, I was home with the baby when there was a knock at my door. It was a social worker from Child Protective Services, informing me they had received a report that I was using drugs and planning to harm my baby. I felt like I was going to be sick because I've never used drugs in my life, and the thought that someone would claim I intended to hurt my son made me physically ill. The social worker was actually very kind and professional. She explained that they had to investigate all reports, but that she could tell immediately the accusations were likely false because I was clearly taking good care of the baby, and he was healthy and well-fed. She still had to conduct a full investigation, so she looked around my apartment, asked me many questions, and had me take a drug test, which obviously came back clean. She said that whoever made the report claimed I had been seen using drugs, and had told someone I regretted having the baby and wished he would just vanish. I immediately knew it had to be Fiona or Penny who made the report, as they were the only ones who had been pressuring me about the baby, and they were likely hoping CPS would take him away so Penny could adopt him. The social worker mentioned that false reports were unfortunately common in custody disputes and family situations, and she could tell this was probably one of those instances. The investigation lasted 3 days, and they were the worst 3 days of my life, because I was terrified they were going to take my baby from me, even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I couldn't eat or sleep. I just held him and cried, promising him I would never let anyone take him from me. Finally, the social worker called and said the case was being closed because there was no evidence of any wrongdoing, and the report appeared to be false. I knew it was Fiona, but I couldn't prove it, so I decided to sever all ties with them. I packed up all the baby items Penny had purchased and dropped them off at Fiona's house with a note stating I no longer wanted them in my life and they were not welcome near my baby. Fiona called me that night, screaming about how I was being overly dramatic, how she was just trying to help, and that I was making a huge error. I told her I knew she or Penny had contacted CPS, and that what they did was unforgivable and could have ruined my life and taken my baby from me. She denied it at first, but then she said perhaps someone was just concerned about my ability to care for a baby, and that if I had nothing to conceal, I shouldn't be upset about the investigation. I stated that making false accusations to CPS was illegal, and that I never wanted to see her again. She started crying then, saying I was all the family she had left after my parents died, and that she loved me and only wanted what was best for everyone. I told her that if she loved me, she wouldn't have tried to destroy my life and take my child away, and that what she did was evil, and I would never forgive her. Penny then got on the phone and began screaming at me that I was ruining her life, and that I was a selfish person who didn't deserve to have a baby when she couldn't. She claimed she would be a better mother than me, and that my son would be better off with her and Owen, and that I was going to ruin his life because I was too young, foolish, and poor to raise him properly. I completely lost my composure then, and started yelling back that she was a psychotic baby-stealing lunatic, and that if she ever came near me or my son again, I would call the police and get a restraining order. I said that just because she couldn't have kids didn't mean she could steal mine, and that she needed serious mental assistance. Fiona got back on the phone and told me I was out of line, and that Penny was just hurting and that I should apologize, but I hung up on her and blocked both their numbers. It's been a week since then, and I keep receiving messages from other family members saying I'm being too harsh, and that Fiona and Penny are family, and that I should forgive them and resolve things. They say Penny is heartbroken and Fiona is devastated, and that I'm tearing the family apart over a misunderstanding. But I don't believe it was a misunderstanding at all. I think they contacted CPS hoping my baby would be taken away so Penny could adopt him, and I think that's twisted and inexcusable. I love my son more than anything in the world, and I would do anything to protect him. Right now, that means keeping him away from people who believe they have a right to him simply because they want him. I know I'm young and don't have much money, but I love him, and I'm a good mother, and that should suffice. Fiona keeps saying I'm making a mistake and that I'll regret severing ties with my family, but I think the only mistake I made was trusting them initially and not realizing how far they were willing to go to get what they desired. I suppose what I'm asking is, am I wrong for refusing to forgive them and cutting them off completely? Or am I justified in protecting my son from people who tried to have him taken from me? I feel like I'm losing my mind because some family members are telling me different things, and I don't know what to believe anymore. Update 1. I posted this a few days ago and received many responses, and I wanted to update because some things have transpired since then that confirm I made the right choice. Some people inquired about my neighbor, who helped me after the baby was born. Yes, she's wonderful. Her name is Sandra, and she's around 65. Her children are grown and have moved away, and she's been like a grandmother to my son. She was actually the one who advised me to document everything because she used to work in family law and understands how these situations can escalate. So, yesterday morning, Sandra came over to check on us, as she does daily, and she seemed very distressed about something. She said a woman had been parked outside our apartment building for about an hour, just sitting in her car and observing our windows, and it made her uneasy. I looked outside, and indeed, Penny's car was parked across the street, and I could see her sitting in the driver's seat just staring at our building. I felt sick to my stomach, realizing she had likely been watching us for who knows how long, and I hadn't even noticed. Sandra said she was going to call the police if Penny didn't leave, but I said, let me try to handle it first. So I went downstairs and walked over to her car. When she saw me approaching, she rolled down the window and immediately started crying. She claimed she just wanted to see the baby, and that she missed him, and that she was sorry about everything that had occurred. I told her she needed to leave and that she was frightening me by sitting outside my home watching us. And she said she wasn't trying to scare me. She just wanted to talk. I said we had nothing to discuss and that she needed to stay away from me and my son, or I would call the police and get a restraining order. She started sobbing then, saying she loved the baby and that she just wanted to be a part of his life, and that it wasn't fair that I got to be a mother when she couldn't. I felt a moment of pity for her, but then I recalled what she and Fiona had done, and I became angry again. I told her that her infertility was not my concern, and that she couldn't have my baby simply because she wanted one, and that she needed to seek help instead of harassing me. She said she wasn't harassing me and that she had every right to be on a public street, but I said that sitting outside someone's home watching them was definitely harassment, and that if I saw her car here again, I was calling the police immediately. Then she said something that truly unnerved me. She stated that I couldn't keep the baby away from family forever, and that he deserved to know his real family who could properly care for him. I said I was his real family, and she retorted that blood didn't make a family and that she had more love to give him than I ever could. The way she said it was so chilling and possessive, as if she truly believed my son somehow belonged to her. I told her she was delusional and needed professional help, and then I walked away while she was still crying in her car. She remained there for another 10 minutes before finally driving away, but I was shaken for the rest of the day. Sandra said I should definitely file a police report just to have it on record in case she returns, and I think she's right. Then last night, I received a call from my Uncle Terry, who is also my dad's brother. He said Fiona had asked him to contact me to try and smooth things over. He stated he understood I was upset, but that family was important, and that I should try to forgive and move on. I told him what had happened with the CPS report and Penny stalking me, and he became quiet for a minute. Then he said he didn't know about those things, and that Fiona had told him it was just a disagreement about the baby's future. I said it wasn't a disagreement. It was them trying to steal my child and making false accusations to the government, and that there was no recovering from that. He said he would speak to Fiona and try to get her to back off, but that I should consider family counseling to work through the issues. I told him there were no issues to work through because I was permanently done with Fiona and Penny, and that anyone who sided with them could also stay away from me. He seemed surprised by my firmness and said I was burning bridges I might need someday. I said I would rather have no family than family who would try to take my child away from me, and that he could tell Fiona and Penny that if they contacted me again or came near my apartment, I would get a restraining order and press charges for harassment. After I hung up, I started thinking about what he said about burning bridges and wondering if I was being too extreme. But then I looked at my baby and remembered how terrified I was when CPS showed up, and I knew I was doing the right thing. Sandra helped me install a security camera that points toward the street so we can see if Penny returns, and she's going to keep an eye out during the day when I'm at work. My boss has been very understanding about me bringing the baby to work, sometimes when I can't find childcare, and my coworkers have been supportive too. I know some people believe I should try to reconcile with my family, but they don't understand that these people tried to have my child taken from me by lying to the government. That's not something you forgive and forget. That's something that could have destroyed my life and my son's life forever. I'm going to keep protecting my baby no matter what anyone says. And if that means I have to cut off toxic family members, then that's what I'll do. My son deserves to grow up safe and loved, not constantly under threat from people who think they have a right to him. Fiona keeps saying I'm making a mistake and that I'll regret cutting off my family, but I think the only mistake I made was trusting them initially and not seeing how far they were willing to go to get what they wanted. Update 2. So it's been quiet for the past week since Penny was watching me, and I thought perhaps they had finally understood the message. But I should have known better. Yesterday was my day off, and I had planned to simply stay home with the baby and catch up on laundry and other tasks. However, around noon, Sandra knocked on my door looking very concerned. She said Penny had come to her apartment that morning, asking questions about me and the baby and claiming she was worried about my mental well-being. Sandra said Penny told her that I had been acting erratically and that the family was concerned I might harm myself or the baby. I felt like I was going to be sick because I realized Penny was attempting to build a case against me by getting my neighbors to say I was unstable. Sandra said she told Penny that I was a wonderful mother and that she needed to leave me alone, but Penny kept pressing and asking if Sandra had noticed me acting strangely or neglecting the baby. Sandra said, Penny also asked about my work schedule, when I was usually home alone with the baby, and whether I had any assistance caring for him. She said it felt like Penny was collecting information for some reason, and that it made her very uncomfortable. I thanked Sandra for informing me, and for not giving Penny any information, and then I called the police to report the harassment. The officer who came out was very kind and stated that what Penny was doing could certainly be considered stalking and harassment, especially given the history with the false CPS report. He said I should document everything, and that if it continued, I could get a restraining order, but that they couldn't do much about someone asking questions in the neighborhood unless it escalated further. He did say he would drive by more often to keep an eye on things, which made me feel a little better. But then this morning, the real chaos erupted. I was preparing for work and packing the diaper bag when someone knocked on my door extremely hard, as if trying to force it open. I looked through the peephole and saw Fiona standing there, looking absolutely furious. I didn't want to open the door, but she started shouting that she knew I was inside and that we needed to talk right now. She was so loud that I worried the neighbors would complain or that she would wake the baby. So I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. She immediately began screaming at me about how selfish I was being and how Penny was having a breakdown because of me. I told her to lower her voice and that she needed to leave, but she kept yelling and trying to push the door open. She said that Penny had been hospitalized yesterday because she tried to harm herself, and that it was all my fault for keeping the baby away from her. I felt terrible about Penny harming herself, but I also knew that wasn't my responsibility, and that she needed professional help, not my baby. I told Fiona that I was sorry Penny was struggling, but that I wasn't responsible for her mental health, and that giving her my baby wasn't going to solve her problems. Fiona started screaming that I was heartless and cruel, and that Penny could die because of me. Then she said that if I truly cared about what was best for the baby, I would let Penny adopt him before something terrible happened, and that she wasn't going to let me ruin everyone's lives because I was too stubborn to do the right thing. I asked her what she meant by something terrible happening, and she said that accidents happen all the time to young mothers who don't know what they're doing, and that it would be tragic if something happened to me, and the baby had no one to care for him. The way she said it sounded like a threat, and I became really scared. I told her that if she was threatening me, I was calling the police right now, and she said she wasn't threatening anyone. She was just pointing out that life was unpredictable. I slammed the door in her face and called 911 while she was still pounding on it and yelling. The police arrived very quickly and found Fiona still outside my building, screaming about how I was killing her daughter. They spoke to her for a while and then came up to speak to me, and I told them everything that had happened, including the veiled threat about accidents happening to young mothers. The officer said that was definitely threatening language, and that combined with the stalking and harassment, it was enough for a restraining order. They arrested Fiona for disturbing the peace and threatening behavior, and I gave them a full statement about everything that had happened over the past month. The officer said that they would recommend I get an emergency restraining order against both Fiona and Penny, and that I should speak to a lawyer about pressing charges. I called in sick to work because I was too shaken to leave the baby. And I've been a nervous wreck all day, jumping at every sound. Sandra came over and stayed with me for a while and helped me research lawyers who handle restraining orders and family harassment cases. I found one who specializes in this kind of thing and has an appointment available tomorrow morning. Sandra is going to watch the baby while I go meet with her because I don't want to take him out in public until I know Fiona and Penny can't get near us. The lawyer I spoke to on the phone said that what Fiona and Penny have been doing is a clear pattern of harassment, and that the threat about accidents happening was definitely grounds for a restraining order. She said that false CPS reports combined with stalking and threats often escalate, and that I was smart to document everything. She also said that I should consider moving if possible, because people who are this obsessed with getting a child sometimes don't stop even with restraining orders in place. That terrifies me because I can't afford to move right now, and I don't have anywhere else to go. I keep thinking about what Fiona said about accidents happening and wondering if she was really threatening to hurt me, or if she was just trying to scare me. Either way, I don't feel safe anymore, and I'm afraid to be alone with the baby. I never thought my own family would try to destroy my life over a baby, but I guess I didn't really know them at all. The Fiona who raised me after my parents died would never have done something like this, but maybe that person never truly existed. I'm going to get that restraining order tomorrow and press charges if the lawyer thinks I have a case. I'm also going to ask about moving the case to family court because I'm worried they might try to use Penny's suicide attempt to claim I'm an unfit mother for some reason. This whole situation is unbelievable, and I can't believe it's my real life. But I'm going to fight for my son no matter what it takes. He's innocent in all this, and he deserves to be safe and protected from people who would use him as a pawn in their twisted games. I'll update after I meet with the lawyer tomorrow, assuming nothing else crazy happens between now and then. Thank you to everyone who has been supporting me through this nightmare. It really helps to know that I'm not crazy and that other people understand how messed up this situation is. Final update. I met with the lawyer and obtained the emergency restraining orders approved for both Fiona and Penny, and I wanted to give you all one last update, because some people have been asking what happened. The restraining orders were quite straightforward to obtain, because I had all the documentation and the police reports, and the lawyer said it was one of the clearest cases of harassment she had seen. Both Fiona and Penny must now maintain a distance of at least 500 feet from me and my son, and they cannot contact me directly or through other individuals. The lawyer also assisted me in filing charges for making false reports to CPS and for harassment and stalking. She explained that while it's difficult to definitively prove who made the CPS call, as caller identity is typically protected, the pattern of behavior clearly indicates it was part of an ongoing campaign to have my baby removed from my care. Fiona was released from jail the day after her arrest, but she almost immediately violated the restraining order by having other family members call me to try and persuade me to drop the charges. Each time someone called on her behalf, I reported it to the police, and now she is facing additional charges for violating the protective order. Penny was discharged from the hospital, and apparently, her husband Owen finally recognized how extreme the entire situation had become, and he filed for divorce. The lawyer stated that the charges will likely result in probation and mandatory counseling for both of them, which suits me fine. I don't necessarily wish for them to go to prison, but I want it officially documented that their actions were wrong and unlawful. As for moving, I found a small apartment across town that I can afford, and Sandra is going to help me pack and relocate next weekend. It's unfortunate that I have to uproot my life because of their obsession, but I'll feel more secure knowing they don't know where I live. My new place is actually closer to my work and in a better school district, so it might turn out to be a hidden benefit. Sandra will miss us, but she said she understands why I need to move and that she'll visit once I'm settled. Work has been incredibly supportive throughout all of this, and my boss even gave me a small raise and mentioned that when I'm ready, they might have a supervisor position opening up that would come with better benefits. It's comforting to know that some people believe in me and think I'm capable of more than just being a struggling single mother. The restraining orders are valid for a year and can be renewed if necessary, but hopefully by then, Fiona and Penny will have received the help they need and moved forward with their lives. That's all from me, and I likely won't update again unless something significant occurs. But hopefully, this marks the end of the turmoil, and we can now simply live our lives in peace.